welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. It's this month that we're going to be discussing is it's okay to fall. In the beginning, when I first started video these episodes of my podcast, this was the first theme. I started this whole having a theme each month, and I thought this is the one that kept sticking each year. So today, I just want to share that we have two new guests, Joan and Jane. I really appreciate having new guests, but also willing ones. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight, just being a part of the conversation. Mental health and everything like that when it comes to being okay with the uncertainty is messy, but I do appreciate your insight.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're very happy to be here.
Well, I just want to share a disclaimer for those in the United States and those if you are in crisis, the new number is 988, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. If it's available in the States, wherever you are around the world, I do encourage you to find what resources are available, because resources are different for everyone, and I just want to start, I always say people say it better than me. I know they do. Elbert Hubbard said this way: there is no failure except in no longer trying. What comes to mind when you hear this quote? Both of you could go.
Oh, well, for me, I didn't finish my bachelor's degree until I was 35. Mm-hmm. And people saw me, because I already became a nurse. People saw me as successful, and I just did not see myself as that. And when I tell young people today, they don't believe me that it took me until I was 35 before I actually went for mental health treatment, and when I finished my bachelor's, actually. So it's never too late.
Hi, it's Jane. For me, it was my relationship with Joan, my identical twin, that it had gotten to a point where it was so bad. She doesn't say she was hateful towards me, but I felt she was. But I was definitely hateful towards her. And for me, we were raised to not have cutoffs. And cutoffs are okay for some people if they need it, but for me, this is half my DNA over here. And I'm telling you, we were in I don't know if it was our 30s or 40s, but I just couldn't stop trying. I could be 101. I wouldn't stop trying. For me, it was too important to have her back in my life. So ditto. Ditto.
A lot of times, at least, me working also in the mental health field, is family is a big component. It could either make things improve or not. And I feel that a lot of times we minimize it. Sometimes it's like we just look at the tangible benefits and needs that the person may need, but the environmental is huge too. I want to say one thing. I have two nieces that are twins. The two girls. The two girls.
How old are they?
I think they're 7 now. They're 7 years old. So yeah, they have two. I'm not sure if they're identical, but they feel it. They were born. They feel very, very close, but we're not sure yet. Anyway, could you share? As new guests, I like those who are listening and my regular visitors to get to know you a little bit more. So, Joan and Jane, could you share a little with those listening a little about your story? What brought you both to where you are today? I guess either one could start.
Well, I'm the younger twin, Joan, and we grew up. I just loved being a twin. Jane wanted something called independence, and so I followed her to college. I didn't tell her. I applied to the same college, and she said, "Okay, if you're going to go to the same college, just don't put me down as a roommate request. We need other friends." Put her down, hands down. I took Jane. I wanted her as roommate because that was tough. Leaving home. I had been with her since utero. It was very scary. And then I followed her into nursing school, but I dropped out. That was another thing I wanted to tell. Well, I was getting kicked out. I wanted to tell young people, because they're so frightened of certain things. It's okay to fall. I had a 1.9 grade point average because I didn't want to go to college. I was there because Jane wanted to be a nurse. So I was there to support her, but I wanted to be in the dorm and study. So then after that, she became a APRN. I followed her right into that. And then the happiest time in my life was when we were working together And when clients would say, that's wonderful, Joan, but can Jane come in here? They wanted two perspectives, and that was my happiest. So we were both therapists for years. We're older now, and we left the profession, and what a profession, and how it's going online. It's nasty, actually. Not only do people need more and they're not getting it, they're now, I want to share this, they are now saying that it's all trauma, all life stress or trauma. And I didn't know this, but in 1952, the first DSM had even schizophrenia as reaction to trauma or life's stressors. And in 1960 or 60 something, they took it out. And we were both in psychiatry in the early 80s and then later on, and it's been a whirlwind. So that was long. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, no, just a little bit more. We were rebels after our father, I think. So wherever we were, and maybe not always a good thing, we were rebels. And you know how it's frowned upon in psychiatry for therapists to come out with their own mental illness. And so that's exactly what we did. We chose to come out with our own mental illness. We waited for Marsha Linehan, the PhD that created dialectical behavioral therapy. She came out with hers, and that was quite inspiring. So, and then we wrote a book with some helpful tips, because it was really the way to heal the diagnoses. In my opinion, one of the major points, you brought it up earlier, is family or your own little community is everything. Yes, we discharge patients back to problems. Anywho, so so we come out with our own mental illness
in the book,
and Joan's a natural born comedian, so it's kind of funny as well, lighthearted. And then some helpful tips that are doable for someone, say, as angry and ungrateful as I was. Because all those self-help books, once they get to those assignments and I have to get a pad and a pencil, I used to just, move that off to the side and do something else. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I always appreciate just when it comes to, relating, especially when I think about, we're talking about environment and family. One thing I don't like to do is reinvent the wheel. If something worked before, I don't want to take it out. So a lot of times when I'm talking to them, whether they're faith-based or not, I'm like, are you faith-based? They're like, no, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. If they are, I'm going to try to support that. So it's one of these things that you kind of, sometimes I also like, especially when doing support groups, facilitating support groups, is the stories. And sometimes that's a unique way of communicating. I would say one of the most inspiring ways to communicate is through stories. Just sharing your story in an effective way. Unfortunately, sometimes we can have a skewed view of what our past was. Sometimes we could kind of have, there's this word, my wife has this book, Untranslatable Words. I thought it was funny. It's from Welsh. I'm going to butcher the word. It's hooray. It says, a homesickness for somewhere you cannot return to, the nostalgia and grief for the lost places for your past, places that never were. I feel a lot of times we get lost in it. Sometimes we kind of convince ourselves that, this is what happens. I talk to my brother all the time about our childhood, and it's very different. Perspectives are very different. So in recovery and when we're talking on the topic, it's okay to fall. I think it's very important to be self-aware of knowing where you were and where you want to go. And could you kind of share when you see this word and what you've experienced yourself when it comes to, self-reflection, and what was one of the pivotal moments to kind of prompt you past certain negative barriers?
I have one.
Good. Thank goodness.
In Connecticut, we lived upstairs, downstairs. And
Ethel and Lucy.
Right. And one day I was leaving my apartment and I saw something in the corner of my eye, and what I saw was the size of a basketball but flattened, and it was like flies had hatched. It's not unusual for me. I've left spiders. Joan and I don't like to kill bugs, and if I don't relocate them, it's not unusual. I had a whole thing of baby spiders one time. So anyway, all the flies were in a nice dark circle, and for me that equated the most darkest. It was the darkest time of my life because I knew in my outer world, and that's where I realized that my version of my childhood, my growing up, my relationship with everybody, my version, I was leaving out the good and only focusing on the bad. So when you do that for 30 or 40 years, I feel like you've just programmed a computer, and that thing called love is archived way over there. It's somewhere else. And then you mentioned faith, and I'm so glad, because I used to call myself a cafeteria Catholic. We were raised Catholic, but I couldn't tell you anything really.
I don't know what that means, a cafeteria.
So what I did was I joined a Christian church, and I gotta say, even on an Easter Sunday, I went to a different church one time on an Easter Sunday. No one knew me, and then I was so thrilled that people started calling me by name, and I felt welcomed. I wasn't feeling welcomed in my own family, and why would they ever welcome me when all I said was, you know what you did wrong in 1972, and how could you do that to me? No, there was nothing but negative. So it wasn't until I dropped to my knees and had some faith and opened that part up where I then began to see things a little differently. Just a different perspective. And, faith is such a beautiful way to get that different perspective. And I have met some wonderfully, I call them faithful atheists, that they go out into the woods and look up and they just see something or feel something that I feel like I see in the privacy of my own home sometimes. And that's where my turning point was. I had to see it differently. I had to. Or I was going to be by myself in what my version of what hell would be.
And I was so angry that I just alienated everybody. My temper was so bad, people wanted to call the police on me. It was just awful. And I even I didn't name it. My nephew, I guess I scared him, and he named me Matilda, and I thought, wonderful. After that French doll, I thought that was lovely. And he said, no, after that horror flick we saw the other night where the fairy godmother, this is how bad he thought of me. The fairy godmother killed the children, Joan, instead of them leaving them money for their tooth. And I went, what a vicious woman. And I couldn't believe he was naming me that. And I want to say that you do not have to be addicted to a specific drug. We are all addicted to something, and I wish it were love at the time. But whatever I was addicted to, I want to say that because I was atheist, bringing AA, that's how Jane was throwing me under the bus there. She was bringing in a lot of AA terms, and this would be me. Where'd you get that from again? It was a lot of AA, and I want to say, for somebody as concrete as myself, in the field, AA works to me. I don't care what, you could be addicted to breathing positive energy. AA works, and it's really worked. So now I do believe in something. Thank goodness.
I do find, especially, I still am a faith-based leader in my community, and it's so complicated. You got people who may have, you'll be in a church setting, mom might be cancer. And then you have someone else in the congregation that you don't know who just lost someone from cancer. It's extremely complicated, and, the dynamic, but also is tricky because, for me, there's a lot of hurt the church has done. The faith-based community has done a lot of damage, but also there, in communities that when you're in a community that you feel like you belong, it's a wonderful thing. I feel like with faith-based, at the very least, in this podcast, I just try to inspire hope. I treat it as a pure outreach ministry. Like if I went to another country, I'm not giving medical or any need that way, but I am giving a place to dialogue, to continue the conversation, because I do find that, Viktor Frankl was one of my inspirations, reading his book, Man Behind Finding Meaning, and he's just quantified, like, when he saw people giving half their bread when they were just there in the concentration camps, and people were like, oh, you're giving away some of your sustenance, but he said there's something more, because those people saw there was another day forward. And I feel that is inspiring, whether you are prone to faith-based or not. I find the fun thinking something bigger than yourself is healthy. I feel when you, and the idea that we are so fickle sometimes, we are so changing all the time, we are so selfish, so a lot of times it's nice to see that there's something bigger that doesn't change, that might be positive, and that's basically what I see when it comes to that.
Speaking of selfishness, which I believe I was that as well, a little bit more than, the scales were tipping. One of the ways that I changed how I viewed the world and then myself was I began two things. One thing, I made a conscious effort to begin viewing people. It started with Joan. I began viewing Joan through compassionate eyes. Mm-hmm. And as I did that, I started changing my point of view of her. Mm-hmm. And I might even be lucky enough, and I have been, from both of my sisters, to hear their point of view. Mm. And then, of course, I never thought of it that way, because I was thinking it was something else as unkind as my thoughts, and it wasn't. And so as I changed, as I changed my point of view, mm-hmm. You widen the lens, however you want to see it, viewing people through compassionate eyes, actually your whole world will change. Mm-hmm. Everything changes. Yeah. Whatever your thoughts are is kind of what I believe is what you bring around you. I mean, everybody knows that when you're in that dating mode in life, mm-hmm. that you're attracting people with similar emotional intellect, as they call it. It could be also, a math person, brilliant in math, but also maybe someone as hateful as I was. And a lot of my boyfriends were less hateful than me, so I learned a lot through that, which was wonderful. Mm-hmm. As well as with my relationship with Joan. So just open your eyes and let somebody else give a point of view. You'd be amazed.
Mm. Yeah. Joan, you have anything to add?
Well, I was going to say that I was extremely hateful as well.
See, she finally admitted it. Because I thought the flies, all those.
If I saw something in the house, in the hallway, as big as a basketball, I wouldn't have gone home that day. Like, there's no way I'm going to go in. I am afraid of bugs still, even though I don't want to, whatever. What I want to say is, when you have trauma, that inner brain that's like a lizard does take over. And I just didn't believe. I kept reading it, but I didn't believe it was me. And it was a client that said, Jane and I had therapy cats. So I was sitting, and the cats happened to have been in the closet. I didn't know it. And one of them jumped from the top of the closet down, and it was really a big boy. I must have done that. And the guy said he had been my client for years, but maybe vice versa there. He said, you ought to get that treated. And I said, what? And he said, that hyperstartle. And that's when I started realizing, wow, Joan, you are acting like that lizard you talk about all the time. My words were so hurtful that my ex-husband and Jane said that they would rather have been physically beaten by me. I'm, again, blown away, because what happens when you're that in it, you're in your illness and you're living in it, you don't think you're that bad. I didn't think I was that bad, but boy, look in that mirror, very hard to do.
And perspective is, a lot of times, there's this one quote from Jonathan. Some of the best songs are sad, but songs are as sad as the listener.
Yes.
It's just very, I found that very, I was thinking it for a minute. I'm like, yeah, that's true in a way. And then there's other quote from David Goggin. He said, the most important conversation you'll ever have are the ones you'll have with yourself. Yes. I feel a lot of times, that is that it's okay to fall moments. That's when you're like, okay, I'm at my last. Like a lot of times people want these milestone moments. Sometimes it's just
right.
It's like, this does not go well today. Let me try again tomorrow, basically. Yeah. But the trying again tomorrow is the important part. I'm going to ask you, no, you shared a lot already, but this is wonderful. I want to ask you both, Joan and Jane, what has helped you both move past? I know you mentioned some, but and what did not help? I guess that's one I want to ask also for those listening, maybe struggling.
I'd like to say what has not helped, because I lived it for a very, very long time thinking this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And the focus on every negative quality within the people around you, rather than the focus of the positive qualities, helped me. And how to switch to that. Viewing people through compassionate eyes, that's beautiful, right? But one day my son said to me, I have a son who I pretty much
named me the nasty.
Named her Matilda, and one day he said to me, you really can't take a joke. And I don't recall what the topic was, but that I was going to prove him wrong. That I could take a joke, because I couldn't. I was too serious and too negative. And so that's what not to do. What I tell people, kind of like how my version of grieving, and I prepared myself for this, and thank goodness I did, because we lost our parents not just in the same year, but 12 days apart. And it was one was expected, one was not. And which, by the way, is a wonderful thing to, if people are having a hard time talking to their version of a God or a higher power or whatever. I think it's fascinating and amazing the results you can get by speaking to your deceased parents. And even if there is nothing, which I do believe there is something, the ways that you can come to more enlightenment. Oh, I just said good and bad. Joan.
What helped me, what doesn't help is, I feel this way when you feel that, if you're an angry person and go from 0 to 60 in a second or a half a second, I couldn't even hear people saying that. I hated you already, and I'll ruin you until you run from me. Thank you. What helped me was when a social worker said, because positive affirmations to me were lies, and fake it till you make it.
She used to want to assault me when I would say that.
If you tell me that, I don't want to fake it till I make it. And I was like, oh, I'm a truth teller, whatever. You do have to sometimes first lie to yourself, because maybe your affirmation is, I'm well adjusted, or I have a lovely family that loves me. Well, that wasn't true. So that helped me to lie, that those were my affirmations. And then the other thing, being tense less helped me. So there were other countries that don't use in the past, present, and future. Native Americans were the ones that were doing the present thing. So that helped me. And then Jane, viewing me through compassionate eyes. Until, I want to tell listeners, if you have an angry lizard snake that you walk on eggshells around, that person, me, wants you to make the first step, because our ego is so, if you heard it one more time, I was ready to kill myself, and I had access to the drugs. I had the means. I was a nurse. I knew how to kill myself. So anyway, that was scary. So if somebody can view a person who's an angry, miserable person in your life, and you're afraid of them through compassionate eyes, it meant the world to me. Immediately, I was thinking, wow, what the heck? She's doing some weird shit. I'm not going to fall for it. She viewed me through that, and I changed. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me add to that, because the reason, one of the reasons I think it took me so long was I was waiting for the give and take to be a little more even. And Joan's trauma was so much, let me just say, so much worse than mine. It occupied her life more than mine, maybe, or outwardly. And I'd like to share with people, because people said things to me like, why do you always have to be the one to say you're sorry? Why do you always have to be the one to make the first move? Well, first of all, Joan sometimes did make the first move, and Joan is a natural born comedian, and laughter really is the best way to probably get through things. Definitely don't go my way with all that meaningful resentment. My goodness, how hard. Nobody wants to watch that movie 1,000 times, but they're going to do the comedy over and over again. But anyway, you wake up the next morning, you're a whole person. You could say you're sorry 700 times. You still woke up. You're still a strong person. You're not a weakling that's always crawling back. When you own up to what your part was in anything, it's always better, and it offers that other person a chance to own up to. And if they don't, So
Yeah, with
be it.
dignity.
Just
Yeah.
be kind to the next. I just thought of it because I never really knew what AA meant with do the right thing, the next right thing. And I just feel like, because that word right implies wrong. But, we all know what the next right thing is. Just think about 9/11 or any other tragedy. We all know what that is. So just try doing it.
I've been saying recently, and obviously with the people I work with, accountability is not a bad word if it's a safe place. It's kind of weird that we say it that way, but it is. And also comedy. I love me some good comedy, and one thing about comedy that's great is that there's so much truth in it, and that's what makes it intriguing. There's like truth interwoven, because it's something that none of us want to really say up front. We're uncomfortable saying, but we're saying it, and it normalizes the situation. It kind of is comforting because you don't feel like you're alone, in that respect. Some of the best comedians could tell stories very well, interwoven with truth. There's a lot of insight, a lot more than we like to admit while we're laughing.
And if you do it in a way that is still coming out of love, and you hopefully you love yourself now too, and can use yourself, but when you do it in that way, you save each other's dignity. And I want to say that men, I feel like in our relationship, I mean, my ex-husband keeps reminding me, you're not a man, blah, 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 whatever. I felt more like the man. And with my father, all we did was he called me his army buddy, and we would go a half hour away to feed these cats, come back home. And he said, wow, that felt good. Your mother doesn't let me talk like that. And I'm thinking, neither does Jane. And that's all I wanted. So we saw this movie, and I can't remember what it was, but the person just said it in a bar. I didn't mean to say in a bar, it could be in a coffee bar. And the guy says, please do something stupid right now so that I don't look so stupid. And I thought, wow, that was so eye-opening for me, because that's where we go. We won't admit, we won't do the accountability. It's all our ego, and it's so sad. Anyway.
Yeah, it's, there's a Pratt study, if you look perfect, if you seem super perfect in everything, you're not approachable. No one wants to really, that whole thing. And also, I feel in regards to, what we're talking about, I feel, understanding the humanity that we make mistakes. We do make mistakes. And, it's setting those boundaries when we can set those boundaries to actually reflect. And then when you can kind of look outside yourself, I may have some perspective, but some of the times, at least from my experience personally, but also working with people, sometimes those insightful things you want to share cannot be learned through words, because words are so hard. Words are hard because you can't. I could say a word right now, and it means something very different for someone else. And so, being careful of verbiage and all that stuff is. But also, when you have that time to accountability, when you have that insight, there's one quote says from Yulia Peralta. She said, "It doesn't matter how strong, well prepared you are if you have no direction." Sometimes we're just doing things. You see this a lot with, I'm going to help everyone in the whole community except myself. And, at the same time, it's okay to do something stupid, as you say. It's okay to kind of have fun. I ask a lot of my clients, what do you like to do? What's your hobby? They look at me like that's a wrong question to ask. I'm like, it's okay to be not okay. It's okay to fall sometimes.
Yes.
Just as any final thoughts as we wrap things up and everything, anything you want to add, and we can put in the notes so people can find you and all that stuff, but any final thoughts you want to share with us, those listening, and everything else?
I do. I want to say that when we thought about coming out with our own mental illness, sometimes I get the person incorrect, but who I believe said it was Vivek Murthy. Said something about, is he the surgeon for? No, I think he's Surgeon General. I think. I'm so sorry, I'm not prepared for that.
No problem.
But it was he wasn't the Surgeon General for the president right now when he said it. Somebody in his family or somebody he knew suicided, and what he said was, it's great that athletes and actors and actresses and royalty come out with their mental illness or addiction. He said, but until the mental health people come out and see, You guys already did it. Everybody with AA and NA, why is it okay for you? And why were we discouraged for coming out? Again, adding to the stigma. So what I want to say is
and the separation.
Absolutely. So obviously you're not actively using when you're talking with, at least a day. And obviously the therapist is going to have to say, this isn't currently my problem. But if you can't come out and say something to get the guard down so that that person can actually, you're approachable now, that person can open up. I mean, we're losing a lot of people. So, and that's why we did it in the book. We came out from under the hood. There, that's why we came out with it. We want people to know, of course we left, but we want people to know it's okay to come out with it.
Okay. And what's the name of the book again? Can you tell the title?
Under the Hood. And then it's Therapy Twins, how we hot-wired our brain. And then it swears a little bit, but it's funny.
It's totally fun. We'll put all those.
Calm the F down and let that SHIT go, is what we did.
And we'll put the link in the notes. And
okay.
Just share,
and it's for free. It's actually for free. It's an ebook. Okay.
And anything else you guys want to add as we wrap up?
Don't wait as long as I did. Please start seeing when the glass is half full, it's 50% empty, but it is 50% full. Please don't wait as long as I did.
Time is precious. Life is precious. Don't wait.
Value your time, value yourself, invest in yourself. Remember to stay updated with Revive Ministry through various platforms, reviveministriesfl.com. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with the last quote. It's from Tom Lloyd Cole. He says, every answer can be followed by another question.